I'm Gary Bolles, Chair for the Future of Work with Singularity University. I'm sorry that I couldn't be on site with you today, but I'm looking forward in the fall when my book tour begins to hopefully being able to take that long delayed trip to Seoul. I wanted to offer you today some thoughts, some insights about what I call the exponential future of education. I think we're at one of those pivotal times in modern history where we're learning that there are tremendous opportunities to change how humans learn and how we work. And I want to give you a little bit of a vision for how I think that might actually be an opportunity for us to take a series of steps to be able to create a better future for learning and for humans. So let me go ahead and share my screen a little bit and give you what I think of as fire starter ideas for the exponential future of education. So I'm the chair for the future of work with Singularity University, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I also have 9 courses on LinkedIn Learning with about 850,000 learners. So if any of these ideas that I'm talking about today are interesting to you, that's another place to go explore. And then I also have a website, gbolles.com, where I talk about my upcoming book, The Next Rules of Work, and offer links to the talks and the articles that I'm going to be mentioning. So I love to start off these types of discussions with a story. So I'm going to wave a magic wand, and it's 25 years in the future. And this is Hayun. And Hayun wakes up and puts on a pair of smart contact lenses. And immediately, Hayun's artificial intelligence coach kicks in and starts to give insights into the schedule for the day, things that Hayun might do. And so one of the things that Hayun is fascinated by is ancient Greece. This is something that Hayun just wants to learn constantly about. And so by using the AI coach, Hayun's able to summon a flying taxi and go to a park outside of the confines of Seoul and meets up with a half a dozen other learners who are all fascinated by ancient Greece. And every one of them, their contact lenses or their glasses converts from augmented reality, sort of augmenting the world around them, annotating the world around them, to virtual reality. And suddenly it's as if they're walking the streets of a city in ancient Greece. And they're remarking on what they see and learning together, learning as a group. Now, that session is done. Hayun hops back into another air taxi and wants to go to a coffee shop in a remote town that she's fascinated by and wants to do some work. And one of the things that Hayun does is one of the most amazing projects that Hayun's been able to get involved in is becoming an expert on vertical farms, and especially vertical farms that might be used in helping to colonize the moon, something that Elon Musk of SpaceX has talked about quite a bit. And so Hayun doesn't have all that great connectivity, so she uses a satellite network to be able to access the internet, does a bunch of her work, uploads it, and then takes another air taxi back home for the day. And then because Hayun has learned so much that day, puts on a skull cap that, as Hayun is going back over the day, is able to record Hayun's thoughts into her artificial intelligence coach. Now, I've just painted a vision of an amazing future of learning that might be possible 25 years in the future. But the truth is that every single technology that I just mentioned exists or is in development today. So the contact lenses, there's a variety of vendors that are coming up with augmented reality contact lenses that are actually linked to a smartphone, allowing people to be able to see information about the world around them. Amazon has just released a set of glasses that have its Alexa artificial intelligence baked into it so that you can actually talk to Alexa. So these are technologies that are not some futuristic vision. They exist today. There are 32 different companies around the world that are working on some form of flying taxi, science fiction level technology. I mentioned that Hayun went for a walk with a bunch of new friends around the streets of ancient Greece. Well, it turns out that there is a game, a video game called Assassin's Creed, where the developers have turned open source software available to educators around the world so that they can actually use this tremendously immersive three-dimensional environment to be able to teach history. I also mentioned that Hayun used a global satellite network. I'm sure that you've seen that there are a tremendous number of satellites that SpaceX and other companies are launching into space to provide high bandwidth access to the internet in some of the remotest parts of the world. We also talked about vertical farms. Well, Singapore Airlines is creating one of the largest vertical farms near its airport to be able to offer fresh greens on all of its flights. One of the largest vertical farms in the world is actually being created in a small town in Virginia here in the United States. And increasingly more and more food, especially as we become more and more fond of having food that is grown close to where we consume it, is going to be done close to major cities. And then finally, I mentioned the skull cap. Well, there's actually a number of studies that are going on now that actually are able to use some of the brain waves, sensing brain waves, to be able to actually model some of the basic human thought. So the takeaway from all of this should be basically a line from William Gibson, the science fiction author, which is that the future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. So when we talk about an exponential future of education and of learning, the truth is that there's so many of the building blocks that we might want to be able to transform it. It's right, they're right here in front of us. And as a matter of fact, the Singularity University, which is a global membership group and think tank, is sort of a virtual think tank, we talk a lot about exponential change. That is essentially that, when you basically double each step, whether you're taking a step 1 meter at a time and doubling it, or you're increasing the pace with which technology is being adopted and reducing its cost. Exponential curves are the increasingly what we're experiencing as we look at seismic change. And what we like to say, we use a line from my friend Shelley Palmer: today is the slowest day of the rest of your life. You're actually here at this inflection point of the curve where the pace and the scale of change are increasing. Now, we used to think that one of the greatest uh, uh, the catalysts of that change was going to be robots and software. And then along came a virus, and we realized that exponential change can happen overnight, that half the planet can go through a very similar set of changes with the right combination of incentives or disincentives, in this case, a global pandemic. But I've been saying for a long time that actually it's the pace and the scale of change that are really affecting our lives so much. The pace of change, that it's just moving faster and faster, and the scale that it's breathtaking in how many people and how many different technologies are influencing our lives. And so what we found with what I called the Great Reset, the global pandemic, that we could change in a very, very quick period of time. Many of the changes we've been talking about to the world of education, we've been discussing these things in the way that we need to change for decades. And then along came a virus, and suddenly we found that that reset could actually encourage us to make really, really rapid change. And I actually wrote an article back in March of April of 2020, and then in March of 2021, and an update to it. And basically, what I said is seemed to be pretty predictable that we were going to go through three phases. There was this falling off the cliff phase, sort of riffling along the bottom phases. We're all trying to get our arms around the virus and trying to restart our economies. But then the sort of phase three, where we would actually hopefully be able to build back better. And what we've seen, of course, around the world is that there are some economies that have been able to get their arms around the virus and to be able to rebuild and rebuild quickly, and others that are still going through really, really seismic changes, and as they're trying to continually adapt. And so my heart goes out to people in those economies and those societies that are still trying to be able to get control of this massive impact on their lives. But there are others that are already rebuilding and hopefully building better. And if there's any arena in which we see people focusing in trying to think about how to build better, it's in education. Now, Education in every country has a different history, but essentially there's a lot of the similarities that we see in the way we have thought about traditional education. The whole idea that you did essentially mass production of education. this looks this looks an awful lot like this in terms of one person in control and then the rest all sort of producing. In this case, it's producing learning. And we did these in institutions, and we said for a long, long time that learning had to occur in these institutions. And then along came the Great Reset, and suddenly we were able to be distributed. We were able to immerse ourselves in distributed education with all of its flaws, but we could adapt in the same way that we could adapt to doing remote work. So now, as we're at that inflection point, as many of us are moving from that phase two to that phase three of the Great Reset, what do we need to do? How do we need to think? Well, my friend John Hagel talks a lot about what he calls zoom in, zoom out. What do we need to do today? What are the issues that we're focusing on today? And what we see is that there's a lot of these questions about personal questions about where you learn and how you can learn and so on. And then for learners, what are those policies that we can adapt to try to help students to be able to continue to learn in many cases still in a hybrid fashion. And then there's this longer term, how are we looking down the road? And those are bigger things like how do we create an environment and where, what, who people learn with, when they learn, and what its purpose is. We give them much more flexibility and control over them. And then as we're building the larger systems, as we think of the policies around education, what's the culture, the learning culture that we're trying to help encourage? Who should learn and when, and where should they be when they learn? And when we have schools or learning institutions, what is their ultimate purpose? So the way I like to help people sort of picture this is to think of this as sort of a circle. And so the where, the what, the who, the how, the when, and the why we learn, we know these are all going through really, really seismic changes. We know that the where immediately we became distributed. It was a hybrid learning environment, not perfect and many flaws to it, but we could at least adjust to some extent to having people be distributed. More and more, it's a group sport. So it's a team process. It's multiple learners working together to learn. We know that the what of learning is the things we need to learn to be able to be functioning members of society and workers in the future is going to become more and more of what I call a portfolio, which I'll explain. The when we learn will need to become more and more flexible. How we learn will be enabled by a technology toolset, an exponential technology toolset, and the why of the reason that we learn will become purpose and what I think of as kind of purpose plus. So really to be able to create this future, we need to think in terms of moonshots. We use that phrase all the time at Singularity University. And what we mean is obviously how big can we make this? How big can we make these shifts? And I want to give you a suggestion that there are four moonshots that we can do. There are countries all around the world that are launching rockets and heading for the moon and beyond. And so moonshots are becoming more and more commonplace. So these should be things that we can do together. These should be ways that we can re-envision how we as humans learn and the institutions that help us to be able to do that. So I'm going to give you four different ideas. The first moonshot is that we need to shift completely differently to a model of what I call problem-centered learning. Now that comes from my perception that essentially work and learning, the way that we gather information is essentially our human skills applied to problems. And so if you think of it as with these human skills and the problems that we want to solve, and it could be a problem as simple as what we're going to do the first thing when we get up in the morning to really, really complex problems, wicked problems that we're trying to solve at the societal or at the global level. And so we have to help learners to understand that so much of the process of being able to solve problems in the future comes from being able to develop human skills and develop them rapidly and to be able to engage in new problems as creatively as possible. And so I say that's skills centered learning. We have to develop skills very rapidly, human skills. We have to become problem centered. We got to focus on those problems, whether it's a dirty floor or a complex market entry strategy or solving a deep problem of science like a new virus coming along. And more learning needs to become project centric. That is, we have to help learners to be able to engage in the context of projects so they can solve a problem and move on to the next one, because increasingly that's how so much of the world of work is being calibrated. Secondly, second moonshot is that we need to shift to a model of lifelong learning. Now, why do we need to do that? Well, in what I call the old rules of work and the old rules of learning, we sort of had this, what my father called the three boxes model: education, and then a big chunk of work, and then a big chunk of leisure in what I call the period formerly known as retirement. Well, that may have made sense when we didn't live quite as long, but now, the 100-year life is not that far out of reach for so many people, for a wide variety of people on the planet. And as a matter of fact, eventually there might be a 100-year career. So some of you who are listening are thinking, oh my God, this is amazing, 10 decades of being able to work. And others are thinking, oh my God, 10 decades of having to work. And so this is an opportunity, though, is to think about, as humans, we're going to be living longer. And so we have the opportunity to be able to think completely differently about how we're going to solve problems. So rather than that three boxes model of first we just have education, and then we just have work, and then we just have leisure in retirement, I believe we're shifting to a new model of what I call a portfolio of learning and a portfolio of work. That is, it's a constantly shifting landscape of maybe a day job, but then projects at night and working on a startup with your friends, and then you take a gap month and you go off and you do online learning, and it's a constantly shifting landscape. And young people are doing this nowadays automatically. They're not following that old three boxes model. They're becoming lifelong learners because it's a hedge strategy against an exponentially changing world. You can't predict whether your day job is going to be around in a couple of years. You can't predict whether or not that degree that you got is going to have a very short shelf life. And so young people instead nowadays are building this portfolio of work. And increasingly, the portfolio of learning is becoming what I call just in time and just in context. That is, you're going to learn to solve the problem that is just in front of you, and you're going to learn as you solve the problem. Again, back to problem and project centric learning. So that's the second moonshot, is a shift to this model of lifelong learning, a portfolio of learning, and also ultimately a portfolio of work. Third moonshot: we're going to use our technologies, our tech fueled superpowers for good. We're going to help humans to be able to develop superpowers. What we've done with so much of our technology, unfortunately we've calibrated so much of our innovation ecosystems in our countries, is about essentially automating human tasks. Like, we've essentially said, let's automate humans out of the picture. Let's just use robots and software. They'll be cheaper than humans. But we need to shift that equation. We need to focus on how we can use technologies to be able to help humans to develop superpowers. Superpowers are basically what you're good at and what you love, the intersection of those two things. And technology can do an amazing range of things to help us to be able to navigate that process of becoming lifelong learners. They can help us to learn more about inventorying our skills, to develop new skills, acquire new skills much more rapidly, to be able to access information that can help us to be able to calibrate our skills, to be able to improve our skills much more rapidly, build those portfolios of skills, to collaborate with others in how they develop their skills. And then ultimately, technology will increasingly augment us. We'll use these digital distraction machines that we have to be able to help us to be able to develop greater and greater superpowers. So that's the third moonshot, is using our technologies to be able to help humans to learn much more rapidly. If you want a good example, look at Squirrel AI Learning in China, which has over 1 million learners that are using artificial intelligence in elementary schools to be able to have customized learning, to be able to help students who have fallen behind on math or sciences to be able to catch up. Fourth moonshot, at the highest level. Much of the things I'm talking about are going to happen at the personal level for individuals and institutions, but at the highest level, how do we think of how we change our entire systems for how we're going to enable people to be able to adapt in a world of exponential change and to become exponential learners? Well, Here's the way to think about it is this exponential curve is affecting how, when, where, and why we work. And that is all going to continue to change from an exponential standpoint. This is the slowest day for the rest of your life. The skills that were needed yesterday are rapidly eroding. The shelf life of knowledge is rapidly eroding. And the skills that are needed today will become tomorrow's less used skills. And so we're going to need to continually adapt to what I call the next rules of work and the next rules of learning. And that's essentially continually focusing on those skills that allow us to be able to continually be adaptive, the skills that are much more transferable and usable in a range of different situations. That is ultimately how we need to change so we have smart policy that allows us to be able to continually have our institutions adapt and to be linked in what we learn and the ways that we will work. If you want a great example, look at what the Singapore government has done with their Skills Future initiative, which is linking the learning process to much more of the way that the kinds of skills that are going to be needed for hiring. And there are countries all over the world that are doing the same thing, that are building these initiatives to ensure that what we learn is relevant and needed in the workplace, and what the workplace needs to be relevant is what is being learned. So these are our four moonshots. Much more problem and project centric learning, shifting to a model of lifelong learning and all that that entails. Augmented learning, where our technologies, our exponential technologies, are helping us to be able to continually adapt in an exponential world of change. And then these smart and adaptive policies for learning. Look, we know that the pace of change is not likely to slow down. As a matter of fact, the pace and the scale of change are only going to accelerate. Today, it's a virus. Tomorrow, it's artificial general intelligence or quantum supremacy and quantum computing. It's some leap forward or some global impact that forces us to go through another great reset. What we must do to be able to continually adapt, to be able to become exponential learners, is we have to focus on these near-term steps of the things we do today to transform these institutions, but also tracking on that much farther future that we must design for, that we must build for, so that we can continually be able to adapt on an ongoing basis. We know that the near-term work is to be able to respond to these needs for people to change where and when and why and how they are learning and with whom they learn. And we know that that's all work that can be done in the near term, but we can lay the groundwork for how people will be able to continually have this flexibility of being learners and have the technologies that they need to allow them to do this. But we know that that future of that completely self-driven learner that Ha-Yun was the demonstration for, that's within our grasp. We can do that from a macro level. We can transform our educational institutions. We can go through this process that we've started in the Great Reset. I think of this period as a new start date for that exponential future of learning. But there's one commitment that we must make to each other, one step that we all have to agree to, and that's that we're here to maximize human potential. We must leave no human behind as we do this. Well, I hope that you'll join me. I hope that this will be the process that we can all commit to. Again, you can learn more on my website, gbolles.com. I really do believe that this is that inflection point. We can look at what each of us does as individuals. We can look at what we do in our organizations. We can look at what we do in our communities, and we can look at what we do in our countries. And at each of those four levels, individuals, organizations, communities, and countries, we can build that collaborative, exponential future of learning together. Thank you.